All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Sisters for Harmony. We have a packed show this evening with two wonderful guests, and I see that Brother Amoja has made it in the nick of time. So we are coming right to the opening. Good evening, Brother Amoja.
Hello, Dr. Walls. Hey, Lucian. How are you
Hello.
doing, Dr. Mapp?
Hello. How are
Oh,
you?
I'm doing great.
all right. So we were just starting with the welcome. So you want to go ahead and open us up?
Oh, sure, Dr. Walls. Well, Hotep, peace and blessings. I greet everyone in the name of God and our ancestors, in whose footsteps we most humbly walk. We thank you for joining us tonight as we share the knowledge across our global community.
Hmm. And tonight's show I entitled A Life Worth Living for several reasons. One, because my guests help people live their greatest life. And two, it is also National Suicide Prevention Month, and it is also National Dog Service Month. And so we know how many people love their animals. And for many people, the animals make one's life worth living. And Dr. Wade, who is our visiting veterinarian who joins us at least once a month, once to twice a month at Green Street Animal Care, she called me one day and she said, I have somebody you have to meet and she has to be on your show. I said, well, Dr. Wade, anybody you tell me has to, we're gonna make sure it happens. And she said, and she's been in Philadelphia. She's had a practice, and she said, come to think of it, she said, I think she might be the first African American woman veterinarian to have a private practice in Philadelphia. Exactly. And I was like, oh my
Hmm.
goodness. And we started, calculating time and so forth. And I was like, you might be right. And I said, well, I definitely have to have her. So we had a chance to talk ahead of time, which was so exciting. And then to be able to have her come on the show was wonderful. So I'm super excited to get ready to get her voice in the mix here. And then y'all know friend to the show, Dr. Natasha Ramontal, who globetrots around the world and hooks us up with vital information. And I just have two people who just got back from Colombia. So I mean, literally just got back on what is today, Thursday. So they just got back Monday. And I know you had been there and you had shared some information, and I shared their links with you to check it out with them, excuse me, your links with them to check it out before they went.
Thank
So
you.
all right. Well, let us start out with Dr. Mapp. Let's get your voice in this space. Would you tell the people a little bit about who you are?
Well, I'm Dr. Linda Mapp, and currently my office is in Sharon Hill, Pennsylvania. And I did graduate from University of Penn in 1978. And prior to that, I did go to and graduate from Cheney University. So,
All
I'm
right.
plug our
HBCUs,
yeah,
yes.
absolutely. And that's kind of where I came from and what I'm doing and where I am practicing now. It's the
Mm-hmm.
Delco Veterinary Hospital in Sharon Hill, Pennsylvania, and I've been here since um, pretty much since I graduated.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, I came out in '78, and this practice was opened in '79 by another doctor, and I came on board at the beginning of the practice, and they left, and I decided to stay,
Mm-hmm.
and I bought them out, and it's been mine ever since.
That's incredible. Well,
All
I am
right.
so curious. What made you want to be a veterinarian, and when did you know that's what you wanted to do?
That's a good question. I was thinking about that, the real answer to that, and I have to give my ancestors credit in the way of my grandparents, primarily, who were animal lovers. And I think that I first started to love animals because they loved animals.
Mm,
Uh, they they had cats, and they actually bought my first dog. My grandfather bought me my first dog because I did love them.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of trying to play with a neighbor's dog, and they felt I was in a little peril. So they decided they were going to get me my own dog at that time. And that's kind of how things got started for me.
Oh, you remember what type of dog it was?
Yes, I do. It was a Cocker Spaniel,
Uh-huh.
which really probably wasn't the best choice for a child, but at the time we didn't know it. When I
Uh-huh.
saw the puppy, it was a private breeder, as I recall. I was around 6 years old, and it
Okay.
was a private breeder, and the puppy just looked cute. And of course,
Mm-hmm.
I saw it, and that's what I wanted. And what does Grandpa do? He's going to get you what you want, right? Your granddaughter is going to get you what your granddaughter wants. So I got the little Cocker Spaniel puppy, and that's where it all
Oh.
started. Hmm.
Well, Brother Mojo, I'm gonna let you chime in because I know your grandfather and his animal relationship has led to yours and your relationship with animals.
Oh yeah. Growing up in the Caribbean in St. Lucia, my grandfather was a farmer. So we had a lot of animals around the place, a lot of animals. I wouldn't believe I was going to be doing this with animals now at my age. I mean, my grandfather was alive. He probably said in his Creole, a bear, which, oh my goodness. This boy is actually taking care of animals now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so grandparents are very interesting force of nature in the children's lives.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I know it was my grandfather that told my father that he thought it would be a good idea for him to be a veterinarian. And my father grew up with, he had 21 dogs in his lifetime throughout, through childhood and so forth. And they lived out in Kennett Square. So there was land out there where they could have them. And he loved animals, but he thought he was going more into cancer research, which is what he was doing until somebody came from, I think it was Dr. Hall, came from Tuskegee to talk to him. And my grandfather told him, like, I think this is something you should really take into consideration. And he and my mother were married at this point, and my mother had graduated from Cheney, and my father had graduated from Lincoln.
Okay.
And so it was like, okay, what are we going to do next? My mother was teaching, she was an elementary school teacher. And like I said, he was doing cancer research. I want to say it was at Penn at the time. And then this opportunity came, and he said it just clicked for him. And within 3 weeks from hearing about it to being accepted to them moving to Alabama, it was a very, very fast process.
Wow.
And then he went down there and he graduated in 1969, and then they came back to Philadelphia, where he was one of the first three Black veterinarians in the state of Pennsylvania, and one of the first three to four to open up his private practice in 1976.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so Dr. Mapp, unfortunately, she and my father did not meet, but they knew of each
Love
other,
each other,
and
definitely.
so many people in common. I know you can talk about we were talking about mentors. And before I ask you this, Dr. Mapp, let me ask Dr. Ramontal, any animals in your life now or in the past?
In the past, not now, only because my children and my husband have really bad allergies, but
Mm.
I love dogs and I used to ride horses also. So I love dogs and horses.
Mm. Oh, we're
We
gonna go
have something in
riding.
common right there. I love horses as well.
Oh,
But
yeah.
growing up in the city, you do? Okay.
Yes,
Yeah, I grew up in the city, and unfortunately, I couldn't own my own horse. But everything was horses. And they knew to buy me books about horses and statues and whatever it was. That's what
yes.
they did because I loved them so much. But it wasn't until really later years, actually, the most hands-on I got was when I went to veterinary school at
Uh-huh.
Penn, and we had a certain block of courses that we had to take at the New Bolton Center, and which we actually had hands-on with horses and cows and etc.
Nice.
So
Oh
that was
wow.
mostly my experience. I had ridden a couple of times the rental horses, a few times, And then it wasn't until much later, I guess maybe 15 years ago or something, I finally got my own horse, and it stayed over Jersey for a while.
Hmm.
He's no longer with us now, but that was my, because that was one of my dreams. I must own a horse. That was one of my
Yes.
dreams. I want a horse. So that I finally got that horse. Yeah.
Oh, Dr. Mapp, that is so inspirational. I have
Yeah.
wanted a horse since I was 5. My parents kept telling me no. I
Oh
couldn't
yeah.
understand why.
No,
We had a garage and my father was a veterinarian. It made good sense to me why I should be able to have one.
no,
Absolutely.
no.
Absolutely.
The
In
voice
fact,
of
in
your
fact,
father
I
from the voice of your father from beyond. No.
in fact I knew a man in the city that converted his garage into a horse stable.
See?
And yeah, I've seen it done. This was some years back as
Mm.
well, but it's doable.
Oh
Yeah,
man. Well, I mean, for me, I love them. I just think they're so beautiful.
Yeah.
they are.
They are powerful. They're majestic,
Mhm.
Exactly.
and that they represent unbridled freedom to me.
Yes.
That's their essence. What is it for you, Dr. Mapp? Why do you love them so much? And then
Well,
Dr. Ramontal, I'm coming to you.
you took a couple of my words right there in your description. I was
Okay.
thinking majestic, as you said,
Mm-hmm.
strong,
Mm-hmm.
free, um, just I don't know, something, just the silhouette of a horse is just so beautiful. It
Yeah,
seems to, when God made everything, He kind of wrapped up all the beauty into a horse.
I
You
love
know,
it.
it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Let's love them.
Mm.
They're different. They're not like our cats and dogs so much. They have a lot of things that are unique about them,
Mm-hmm.
and in the way that we have to uh, function around them and with them. But they're truly beautiful.
Yeah. Go ahead,
I
Dr.
love.
Ramontal. What is it for you?
I actually echo the same sentiments. It's a beautiful animal. They're powerful. And I don't know, when I was younger, I used to watch Beauty.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, the story about the horse. And I don't know, I think I was just mesmerized by that. And I used to just ask, can we go and find a place where I would ride horses? And we would go starting at the ponies when I was younger and then getting up to horses. And I just think they're beautiful animals.
Mm-hmm.
They
Well,
are.
Brother Mojo, we're not gonna leave you out. What's your relationship with horses?
Well, my grandfather used to ride a horse. That was his mode of transportation.
Oh.
And I heard so many stories about it. But I think that for me, like even I don't know, for me, when you look at a horse and the horse looks back at you, there's like a certain connection. I don't know. When I look at horses and they look at me, the eyes are just very interesting how they
Mm-hmm.
look at you. And
Yes.
and people always like, a horse will like you in a blink of an eye and stuff like that. And
Mm-hmm.
I have never had problems with horses.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I'm around them, I'm very comfortable and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I think that they have like that. I guess the windows to your soul.
Mm-hmm. I was going to mention their eyes, and I was also going to mention the fact, as I mentioned, this is National Suicide Prevention Month, and I know a lot of times with children with autism and learning differences and so forth, they do a lot of work with a question with the therapy, equine therapy.
Mhm.
And Dr. Mapp, I see you shaking your head. What's coming to
Yes.
mind for you?
Yes, that's true. Yeah, and I think it's a lot about horses because with all animals actually, there's an interconnection between us and them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a bond that forms, and actually, when you hear people speak of energies, okay, well, our energy kind of reflects off of them, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's a good environment if you have a horse. It should help. It would help those children to build confidence and brings a certain calm. I think over
Mm-hmm.
individuals. It's
Yeah.
the interaction and the bonding is so important to. I think helping those children to be more confident about themselves and just life.
Yeah.
It's, mhm.
I totally agree. Dr. Ramantal, were you going to say something or were you thinking something?
No, I was just agreeing and saying that they are gentle, even though they're powerful. So it's really
Mm-hmm.
an interesting balance of the beauty, the power, and just being, how it does have healing capabilities. They tend to react to your whatever behavior you have
Absolutely.
it, just know, yeah. And I just find it to be so
Absolutely.
fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If
Yeah,
we're afraid, just from personal experience, even with my horse, because and move on, but he, I didn't get to be with him as often as I'd like because he was kind of a distance away from me, but he tended to be a little nervous.
mm-hmm.
And if he's nervous, then I'm nervous. The nervousness just goes back and forth. It just keeps transferring back and forth to the animal.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it teaches us while riding that you need to focus on yourself and are you comfortable? Are you calm? Because the animal's going to react to it. And
Yeah,
even in practice with smaller animals, it's the same thing
yeah.
because they're so often they're afraid. Most times when they come to the office, they're afraid because dogs in particular they don't belong on tables,
Mm-hmm.
and they know they don't. Okay, but we examine them on tables, so I think that's the first thing. They come in and they put up on a table, and they're afraid. But
Mm-hmm.
speaking of the eye, as you were speaking about the window to the soul, I try to make the eye contact with them
Yes.
and bond before I even start to work on them as a doctor. I try to look at them and look them in the eye. Those that will allow me to. Most of them will look them in the eye, kind of talk to them, and make a bond, create a bond between myself and them. And then I
Mm-hmm.
try to work on them as a doctor
Mm-hmm.
because as I've said, our energy matters and it reflects on them.
Big time. Big
Big
time.
time. Yes.
I know with Edmund and I, when we took over my father's practice after he transitioned and turned it into an animal care center, learning how to bond with the animals and recognizing their different personalities. My
Yes.
goodness gracious.
Oh yes.
And really understanding in closer proximity to how they are service. They provide so much service to people,
Oh yeah.
helping with anxiety, helping with bereavement. I mean, we've experienced that where maybe the animal belonged to a loved one who had made the transition, and this was that person's connection still to that person through this animal. And the animals play so many roles. I see someone here said, dog lover here. They give the true definition of unconditional love. Ain't that the
That's
truth?
right. Unconditional love. That's right.
Yeah. Unlike them cats, but them dogs get
Well, some cats do too.
mine has a tendency like if he hasn't seen me, he'll shun me, and then he'll come close like, but I will rub up against you because I do like you and I love you, but I am mad at you. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. So, Dr. Ramontal, what's going through your mind?
I'm just thinking about the healing aspects that most animals can bring.
Mhm.
Thinking about how smart, and what comes to mind immediately are dogs, only because in healthcare I find that to be the animal that's used the most.
Mhm.
But you know how they can trigger someone who's a type 1 diabetic to let them know, hey, you got to take your meds. Even with natural disasters, the dogs it can sense it and
Yes.
usually will pull someone away, even with asthma, different things. So I
Mhm.
just find them to be really interesting animals, and I'm a big dog lover myself, so
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
I
It is,
am.
it is fascinating what they are able to do. We have a client who has impairment with vision. And so just even watching, and what have we seen, Edmund? He's had what, two or three service dogs since we've in the
This
past
is
seven
this
years.
yeah, this is his third one.
Yeah. And we've seen some really good service dogs, and we've seen some that I think that dog paid some treats to get a diploma. 'Cause I'm like, that dog does not listen or take direction. Well, how did he pass? But it's been interesting to watch the development of the service animals. And so we've seen those as well as nowadays people have asked me in my practice, could I write letters for them to have the comfort? animals,
Mm-hmm.
because some apartments and so place they don't allow animals, but if it's a comfort animal, then they will allow it.
Right.
So, Dr. Mapp, have you seen an increase in that over your career?
I have. I think that it's just become official. The animals were emotional support
Support,
animals
yes.
all along, but now it's becoming more official.
Mhm.
And as you said, that it allows them to go certain places that they weren't allowed to go before.
Mhm.
Um, the support animal, and I think it's important because a lot of people, as you said, mentioned a little earlier in regards to mental health, um, being alone or depressed, or sometimes when you're ill, the animals stick by you. Okay, they know that they're aware of these
Mhm.
things about you, and because of the unconditional love that we mentioned before, you'll notice that they gravitate more toward you.
Mhm.
I've seen that with my own animals anyway. If you're ill, they stick by you. They know you're not feeling well.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, some special services that they can do. There's some that they're using some animals now to detect some cancers because they can
Mhm.
detect them, as you mentioned, with diabetes before a person, or sometimes pre-seizure people that have epilepsy.
Mhm.
They can
Mhm.
they have dogs that can detect that a seizure is about to take place, and they make the person aware so they can get to a comfortable place, get down on the floor so they won't injure themselves.
Mhm.
So they play a large, a lot of roles, and even those that aren't specially trained, it's a known fact that having pets and having them around us, it helps with your blood pressure. It
Mhm.
helps to lower blood pressure, and they can help you de-stress and these types of things. So they're definitely a gift from God for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I love all of that. Dr. Ramontal, in the nursing profession, when and where have you seen the use of animals?
Typically, excuse me, on the floor where they have a cancer unit, and
Mhm.
it can be adults or pediatric. You find them going around, or those who are terminal, and they may be on the floor, and they bring them around just to lift their spirits because maybe depression,
Mhm.
loneliness, all of those things. That's typically where I've seen them.
Yeah, I know when my dad was going through his battle with cancer, and he would be usually at the University of Pennsylvania or an affiliate. And I'm trying to remember what the dog's name was, but he was the therapy dog that would come around. Oh, and at Moss Rehab. And the dog would literally, if my father was out at PT or something like that, the dog would just wait. He would not budge. He would lay at the foot of my father's bed on the floor.
Exactly.
And the therapist would be like, "Come on, we'll come back later." And that dog was like, "I don't know who you talking to. Like, I ain't leaving until I see Dr. Walls." And he
Yes.
would
Hmm.
stay. And my father, I think it was Teddy, him and Teddy would just have their bonding time. They had established their own relationship, and it was great because a lot of times they didn't know he was a veterinarian at first. So for him to have the relationship with the animal, it was extra for him,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Because it took him back to kind of being in his environment because he had been taken out of it due to the illness. So it was really amazing to look at that healing power. I would say we also saw a lot, and Evan, I know you can speak to this because you really do the daily operations at GSAC. During the pandemic, the number of animals that were adopted and rescued during that time. Dr. Mapp, did you see a super increase during that
Yeah.
time?
Yes, I did. And and you're correct. It was amazing. It was suddenly, when COVID happened, business just exploded,
Hmm.
and thank God it's continued to since then. I think what happened, I think people that didn't find you before found you,
Yes.
found you, and because I think all the vets, we were all busy like that,
Hmm.
and so it was kind of good for the veterinarians. We know COVID was a bad thing, but it was kind of nice for the veterinarians because it did help with business a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
So
I
the,
think part of that was, as you said, they started to rescue more animals, adopt more animals, and not only that, they were at home with the animals more.
yes.
So I think they were paying more attention to the
Mm-hmm.
animal's needs. Whereas before they'd be out of the home and they didn't see the animal needed this or this was wrong or that was wrong. And I think it did bring them a little closer together. And
Yeah,
yeah,
I agree. Brother Moja, anything?
No, I just piggyback on that. What Dr. Mapp just said is this, that I think with COVID, COVID stopped us from our everyday thing that we used to do. And when we had an opportunity as human beings to actually look at ourselves and feel from within, because all of a sudden that running around you used to do, that routine you had, this running was gone. And now you have to kind of like focus on yourself. And then found that, I think a lot of us found a desire to give of
Mm-hmm.
ourselves, and and that loneliness, that if you were single, even if you were married, that wanting to just have to appreciate life. I think that made some people look for animals, pets. It took us back to our childhood. Some of us, it took a lot of us back to our childhood days when we had those animals. All of a sudden, you see people were starting to re invent themselves or get to know themselves again from a different perspective as an adult, where we didn't have to run to a job. We had to focus on ourselves more. So I think during
Mm-hmm.
COVID, it gave us an opportunity to relive our childhood to a certain extent, and that brought animals back into our lives.
Mm-hmm. I want to point out Dr. Wade is on, and she said, how beautiful that your father spent his career providing care and comfort for dogs, that a dog would be there to return the favor and love. Yeah, it's very special. I had to tell you, at his memorial service, um, right at the point, I can't remember what the statement was, but somebody was talking about my father's love for animals, and right as they said it, a dog barked. Someone was outside with the animal. And here was the thing, we found out who that dog was. The dog's name, ironically, was named Barkley. Barkley was a dog that my father and I rehomed. When I had taken him to one of his cancer checkups, there was a nurse there, and she was talking, had no idea what my father did, but she was talking about how she had gotten her daughter this puppy because so cute, like the grandfather, right? It was just like my 3-year-old said she wanted a puppy, and the puppy was cute, and my daughter's cute, so I'm gonna get them. And then she said, I didn't know a puppy was so much work. And she was a nurse. And so she's like, I'm doing, 12 rounds, 12-hour shifts and so forth. She said, I can't care for that puppy the way that it needs to be cared for. I need to rehome it. And at that point, my father and I looked at each other and just started laughing. And so she was like, what? And I said, he's a veterinarian. And she was like, no way. And it was like, all right, tell us about the animal, describe the animal. We were like, we know the perfect home. And so that was probably his last client, because then we ended up rehoming, and that was Barkley who had come. Really got to say thank you and goodbye at that point. So, but it
yeah.
was very special, very special. All right, Dr. Ramontal, what's going through your mind with all of this?
No, I'm thinking about companionship and how, at least at the onset of COVID, how the isolation was polarizing,
Yes.
globally. And I think that's why, people trying to make sure they keep their family safe. Normally, they're the ones that would go check on them, but now they may be putting them at risk depending on what issues either they have or their loved one has. This is where animals come into play,
Mm-hmm.
and keeping people company and
Yeah.
keeping their spirits up, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. So, yeah, isolation is a huge, huge issue. And I think it also helped bring to light a lot more mental illness,
Mm-hmm.
and just talking about it or making or destigmatizing it to a certain degree,
Yes.
because I find that since the onset of the pandemic, people are more open to talking about anything pertaining to behavioral health and mental health.
Mm-hmm. It's the absolute truth. I was just sitting, I was laughing internally as I'm looking at us on the call, because all of us were pulled to the forefront during the COVID. So, me as a clinician, it was, needless to say, I was inundated with clients as well as with all of the social injustice and unrest that happened in 2020. So a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion work. Did a lot of workshops during that time. Dr. Mapp, as we're looking at the increase in animals, caretakers, and so forth. I mean, needing shots, needing everything, all the care that animals need. First time pet owners, the education that needed to happen. Dr. Ramontal, you being a nurse goes without saying on the forefront of everything that needed to happen. And then Brother Amoja, with you being the caretaker of these animals. Now, it was interesting because I remember it wasn't until June of 2020 that we started getting governor kind of restrictions as animal caretakers and veterinary clinics and so forth. We were kind of on the last of the spaces that was able to function and stay open. And then I remember it was an edict that came down sometime in June, and Dr. Wade was like, "Did you see that?" I said, "No, what do I need to see?" And she forwarded me, and it was saying like they were holding off on vaccinations until it was until something, but it wasn't, they weren't making it mandatory that they had to be done by that certain date for a period of time. And so we were like, oh goodness, what are we like, what are we going to do? What does business look like going forward? Because even with grooming, we were still able to do that for an extended period of time until we weren't. But to get back to vaccinations and so forth, Dr. Mapp, what type of information, caretaking do you want to share with the public? Because we have a lot of first time dog owners, and then sometimes we have some long time cat people who say, my cat's a house cat, they don't need certain things. What are things that people definitely need regarding animals? What do they need to do?
Well, preventive care is important. Um, the old adage, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, is very true where
Mm-hmm.
animals are concerned. Um, Immunizations, you mentioned immunizations. Those are important because one of the diseases that um, is very can be very deadly is parvovirus, for example. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm experiencing kind of a rise in parvo right now. So I
Oh.
would recommend that everyone that hasn't had their dogs immunized take them out and get them immunized, currently. And if
Mm-hmm.
you have a new puppy,
Mhm.
it's wise to keep them indoors or in your own surroundings because taking them out of their own environment is how they can come in contact with the virus. So you want to keep them close to home and at home until you've been to your veterinarian and gotten the proper immunizations and the scheduling of the immunizations. That's important.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think when you speak about cats, one of the uh, most prominent things that comes to my mind and that the people are not aware of oftentimes is the trouble that some male cats can get into where they cannot urinate. And people are not aware of it. And
Oh no, I hadn't heard that.
sometimes they lose their cats because of it. Because by the time they get to the doctor, to the veterinarian with it, it's a little late because they weren't aware that this exists. So maybe some of the people, the listeners, this might help them,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you have male cats. You want to be aware that they are urinating on a daily basis. And if
Mm-hmm.
for some reason they are not, you want to make it an immediate visit to the veterinarian. Don't wait overnight. You want to make it immediate. And one of the ways, sometimes people bring them in and they say, "Oh, my cat is having trouble, defecating." Right, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not that. The posturing of the cat makes it look like that's what the problem is. He's constipated, but it's not what it is. More than likely, he cannot urinate. So I just want to
Oh.
kind of share that with the listeners because that's one of the things that often people are not aware of. As you
Mm-hmm.
said, Dr. Balls, you didn't know that. So yeah, I just want to alert people to be a little more conscious and observant of the cats in that way. And like
Yeah.
keep in mind to get the cats immunized as well, but those puppies and the dogs, you really want to be, especially now, on the alert and get them in and get the immunizations done and get them done properly. I
Mm-hmm.
know some people, some breeders in particular, they kind of want to do things on their own, and they don't always know the proper schedule that immunization should be given. That's very important. So if
Mm-hmm.
you get a puppy, a new puppy, for kittens, sometimes the breeder will say, "Oh, he's had his shots." Because they don't know, when they convey that information to the buyer, oftentimes the person thinks, "Oh, I don't have to get any more
Yeah.
immunizations. He had his shots." Not true at all. That puppy is not immunized. Okay, so you need to visit your vet as soon as possible after purchasing your new puppy or kitten, so that
Mhm.
you can get to more proper schedule of prevention. One
Yeah.
other thing I'd like to bring up is heartworm disease. That's something that some of you may or may not have heard of, heartworm disease, and you can Google it. The folks that are listening, um, both cats and dogs can get it. It is not something you can treat in cats, so it's best to prevent it in cats, and your veterinarian can help you with that. In
Mhm.
dogs, it can be treated, but the treatment is very harsh because it involves an arsenic compound. So the
Mhm.
prevention is the way to go with it. Okay,
Mhm.
it's very easily done. So when you see your vet about that, ask about heartworm disease. How do I prevent heartworm disease in my dog? Okay, that's kind of the things I would like to advise you. There's lots
So
more where
important.
that comes from, but those are highlights for right now.
Yeah. Well,
Moving.
tell me this, Dr. Matt. What are some things that you have experienced in your practice that you were just shocked? And so I'll give an example. Like with my father, he had a client that was a mountain lion. Nobody
Ah,
was expecting.
okay.
Nobody was expecting that, but Mercury showed up one day, and that became his buddy, and that became one of the infamous stories where people were like, "I heard your father." It was like, "Yes, that is very true. We do have a picture. I may see if I can find it real quick and pull it up while we're on the call."
Yeah,
So it's
I,
really
I
cool.
would love that. If I'd seen a mountain lion, I would have loved that. Mine doesn't get as interesting as that.
Okay,
About the most exotic I've ever seen was it's called a cotamundi, and it's related to the raccoon, and it's
okay,
more or less a South American animal. That
uh
was the
huh.
most exotic. And then next to that, I'd say was a potbelly pig.
Oh,
Yeah.
are they cute?
Uh, when they're little, they do get bigger. People don't know that they do get big.
Uh
Not as
huh.
big as some of the other hogs, but they get big. So,
Okay.
hmm
All right. What you thinking, brother Emoji? I see you laughing.
I'm just laughing because like a couple months ago, we had that dog that came in. It was it's a Spanish dog. And it's big. It's a big dog, and it
Oh,
was still
I
a
didn't know
puppy.
the type.
And
Yeah.
we had out in the yard, and the guys and someone said, "Is that dog legal in Philadelphia?" And I said to him, "Well, he has his vaccinations and everything, so I guess they took him to the vet already, and he's been very friendly with me, so I guess he's legal."
wow.
I forgot the name of the dog, but it's a Spanish breed, and it's the
Hmm.
first we that's the first time we ever had one. They left it.
Mhm.
It was a puppy. They left it with it was a puppy. It was about 110 pounds.
Mm.
Wow.
Yeah, it
Mhm.
was a big black dog. It was beautiful.
Was it some type of mastiff? Do you remember?
It looked like a mastiff, but it wasn't a mastiff. I forgot the name of the dog because the owner told me the name of the dog, and I looked it up, and it was a Spanish. It was more. It's known in Spain,
Hmm.
and it looked like a mastiff because his head was so big and he had the ears and stuff. He looked
Yeah.
like a
They have various breeds of mastiffs, though,
yeah.
from various parts of the world. So it might still have been some sort
Hmm.
of
Go to
mastiff.
the bed.
I can't say because I not
Yeah.
haven't seen it, but
Yeah, it, wa-
they,
it was a
like for
very it was a very
example,
friendly.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
friendly,
I
but he
think
was just
one of the biggest is like a Tibetan Mastiff. I've never seen one, but
Okay.
if you Google that dog is
yeah. That's a
huge.
big dog. I googled that dog when I seen the
Huge.
pictures of it. That's not a dog. That's a
A bear.
horse.
A bear.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
a big dog.
exactly.
But
So,
hey, but Dr. Wilson, remember we had the lady who had those two dogs from South Africa.
Yes, I was trying to remember what type of dogs they were.
Yeah, they were South African hunting dogs. I forgot, so they had a lady who breeds them in Texas, and she had two of them. And
hmm,
those dogs were big when they were little puppies. The paws are huge; they were
hmm,
humongous. I wonder what they feed them now.
Yeah, right, exactly. So there's the picture, Dr. Matt
Oh
and
wow.
yeah,
Dr. Ramontal. Yep, that's
Wow.
Mercury.
interesting. I wish I had. I wish I could see something like that come in my office. That's
Yeah.
great. That's great. Mountain lion,
Yep, yep.
terrific.
So that was back when Pennsylvania would allow it, and then
Yeah,
in the mid '80s, they
yeah. They're
ended
not
up telling
legal.
her, yeah,
Yeah,
she got you either got to get rid of it or you have to move. So she
yeah.
opted to move to California.
Oh wow.
So yeah, take her
Does she
baby
still
because she
have it?
said she had been. Well, I mean that picture is from the '80s.
So
So
the animal may have passed on.
yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
but she kept it. She said she had raised it since it was a cub, and she
Yeah,
was not getting rid of her
that's
baby.
good.
So that fur baby mentality been around for a long, long time.
Absolutely.
Yes, I had to say one of our new dog owners said, "Thank you for this information, Dr. Mapp."
You're quite welcome.
If you can put in now, they have a unique dog. Hopefully they're still on. Put it in the chat what type of dog it is because it's a rare breed. It's not one that we see ever. Um, so I have to wait for them to put it in there. So, Dr. Ramontal, any questions for Dr. Mapp?
I did want to ask you, do people come to you asking you about whether animals outside of maybe horses and dogs can serve as therapy
Mm,
animals?
They haven't come to me asking, but I know that they can. Some of
Okay.
them can. People do have some pocket pets, as they're called,
Hmm.
that are emotional support animals.
what is a pocket pet?
Guinea pigs, for example,
Oh,
Okay.
gerbils,
Uh-huh.
hamsters, and
Okay.
other rodents.
that's
Yeah.
Um,
interesting because you know that's what they use in schools. You
Yes.
know, in elementary schools, they tend to have them in the classes to teach the kids
right.
about how to take care of them,
Mm-hmm.
science, and all kinds of things. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so now, Dr. Matt, for any person, and usually I would say children, but we meet people of all ages that are interested in a career with animals. What are some what are some recommendations you have for people? What should they do if they're interested in getting in the field in some way, be it a vet tech, a veterinarian, a groomer, or so forth? What are some things you recommend?
Well, if it's not becoming a veterinarian, actually, because I do know you're going to have to actually go out to school, and it's some many years involved with that. But other
Hmm.
things like veterinary assistant, I know that they do have some online courses, and as a matter of fact, I have a current student that I'm mentoring that told me she wanted to become that, and I pointed her in the right direction, and the very
Hmm.
next week she enrolled, and so she
Hmm.
comes now to me for the hands-on portion and to learn things, because sometimes reading in a book is one thing, but really seeing it in person or experiencing it is always better. It helps to
Yeah,
reinforce your memory and understanding of whatever it is you're reading about. So, yeah.
for sure.
So there are some online things available.
Okay.
Okay. Um, as far as there's also I do know in Pennsylvania area there's Harpum, and I know that they
Hmm.
still offer a veterinary technician course there.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah,
And there's also Manor College over
okay,
in like the Jenkintown, Abington side of town. They too offer a vet tech
okay,
program as well.
okay.
So these are things I started looking into when my father made his transition. We were like, what are we going to do with this practice?
Mm-hmm.
And how do we keep it going? Because he had been in business for 41 years and wanting to keep that legacy and animal care vibrant in that location. I was like, okay, I can maybe go back to veterinary school. Let me see how long does it take? How can I manage this? How can I navigate all of this? Yes, Dr. Ramantal, all of these were real thoughts. And so,
Yeah.
and then it was like, okay, you can go do vet tech. And I'm like, well, if that's 3 years and veterinary medicine is 3 years, I might as well go for the gusto. And so then it was like, okay, what can I do? What can I do? And I couldn't figure out how to navigate my business and taking care of my mom and going to, I said, I can't do, I said, what can I do? And then in prayer and quiet thought, it was, you can go become a certified dog groomer. And it turned out that Pennsylvania was one of the only places that had certified dog grooming.
Oh,
And yeah, and so I was like, okay, God, if this is the direction we're going, I need my schedule to work out. And so first it was like 4 weeks and an X number. And I said, okay, I can move all my clients around. I can do it. I said, God, it would really be helpful if they could have class on Saturdays. Like, can you make that work out? And I kept going back on the website. I lie to you not. My father made his transition. Actually, it'll be 7 years tomorrow, September 6th, 2017. And so um, the day after he made his transition, that's when all of these thoughts started going through my mind. And I said, God, I need some direction. And dog grooming came to mind. I searched. It turned out in Hershey, Pennsylvania on September 12th, 2017, there was the largest dog grooming conference in the world taking place. Who knew
Oh,
there was a thing?
a
how about
sign.
that? I didn't.
I,
Yeah.
And guess who got on the road and drove 2 hours to Hershey, Pennsylvania?
Okay.
Okay. And so I went up there and I sat and learned how to, run a dog grooming business. And I sat in on other classes and figured it out. And then that's when I was like, okay, Lord. And I started looking for dog grooming schools. And it was like, Pennsylvania has this dog grooming school, no problem. And next thing I know, it pops up. We've never done this before, but we're thinking about doing Saturday classes. Yes. I was
Okay. Well, good
and
luck with that.
I called and I said, I understand y'all are thinking about Saturday classes. They said, we need more than one person to join. I said, you ain't said nothing but a word. I called one of my friends who was a barber and I said, would you go to dog grooming school with me? And they were, and so they said, sure, no problem. And so from September 30th, 2017 to December 23rd, 2017, every Saturday for 8 hours, we drove an hour away in order to become certified dog grooming. And so she groomed for us for about 5 years and then she opened up her own grooming
Oh,
space. So yeah, so it's wonderful. So it's something I have in my back pocket. It's not something that I do, but I can do it. So um but yeah, I mean, it's been the animal care piece has been a wonderful addition to our life. It was something that was completely unexpected. And I mention it because life does what life does,
Right.
right? And we make the adjustments, and there's things I tell people, obviously, there's things that we will, like being a psychologist was something that I wanted to be. Owning an animal care center, I would say it was destined. It
mm,
was not something that I thought I would ever do. As my husband said, his grandfather would be like, "What in the world? Like, where did this come from?" He never thought being a videographer, photographer, filmmaker, never did he imagine that this would become a part of our lives. But come tomorrow, it's been our reality for 7 years. And we see it continuing as part of our reality, working with all of the different animals, learning all of the different personalities. There's certain ones that, gravitate to him and follow him around like nobody's business. And there's certain ones that shun him and come to me. And so it's definitely been an amazing journey. And in that, we've had to take care of a gerbil or two and a rabbit or two in our time. So speaking of that, Dr. Mapp, any exotic animals that you take, any snakes, any things like that?
No, I don't see reptiles primarily or birds because
Mm,
those are other specialties, and those animals are very different from the mammals. I would say so. I,
mm-hmm.
I stick pretty much strictly to mammals in my
Okay.
practice. Mhm.
All right. Well, tell me this. We have talked about a lot of different things this evening. Are you still taking clients? If we have some people in the listening audience that need care,
Yes, I am,
okay.
and we'd be happy to help you. And I guess can I tell them where I am again?
Yes, please.
All right. We're at the Delco Veterinary Hospital, and that's located at 1301 Hook Road in Sharon Hill, Pennsylvania. And a phone number, quickly, I'll help you with that, 610-586-1577. And we'd be happy to see you.
Fantastic. Fantastic. All right. So, Dr. Ramontal, we have talked about Dr. Mapp's journey into veterinary medicine. How did you start your journey into the work that you do?
That the
She
Cliff
married a
Notes
Lucian.
version. That's not how it happened. I, I did not want to engage in healthcare at all, to be honest. I did my undergrad at another HBCU, Howard University.
Okay, come on.
I did it in
What's this
international
one?
business and finance. So I was in a
Huh.
completely different industry and came out, was working for an international nonprofit where I went all over the Caribbean, working with governments and nonprofits, working on economic and social development.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out like I had a personal tragedy that led me to healthcare, where one of my brothers passed away un- unknowingly at the time, but it was something that he did not know he had, and
Mm-hmm.
it was one of those things where I just sort of reevaluated where I was and what I was doing. I was living and working in Washington D.C. and loving my life there and engaging in international development, but I was like, okay, I think I need to go home and heal and be with
Mm-hmm.
family who understand the kind of grief I'm going through. And while I was there, I just said, you know what? I really want to work to help prevent what happened to our family happening to others. And I decided
Mm-hmm.
to go back to school. I had already had a master's in something completely different, non healthcare related. And I said, well, I'm going to go and get a bachelor's in nursing,
Mm-hmm.
an accelerated program for a year. It was the toughest, one of the toughest years of my life. And came out and started working in the emergency department.
Wow.
And my mom's been a nurse since she was 17 years old. She is 74 now. 74,
Wow.
73. Yeah, so she used to tell me, "Oh, you'd be a great nurse." And I was like, "I don't like the sight of blood. No, there's no way." And I end up in the emergency department where you see it all the time, but I appreciated it because
Mm-hmm.
honestly, I it was organized chaos. And I also got to see a number of different types of cases.
Mm-hmm.
And so I used to say, well, I'm a jack of all trades, master of none, but I never had to come back and see the same patient. And I learned
Mm-hmm.
something new and honed a lot of skills with the number of things that I saw because I really worked at a very busy emergency department in Miami that was busy all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's what happened there. But I actually saw a lot of cases come in from people who traveled abroad to get predominantly cosmetic surgery.
Mm-hmm.
It usually botched them up. They either had weight loss surgery or some type of cosmetic surgery. Would fly back too early, and then in America, doctors don't like to touch other doctors' work.
Mm-hmm.
It leaves them liable.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm.
found that predominantly Hispanic women and Black women were the ones doing it. And that's ultimately what led me to say, you know what, let me start a channel where I at least educate people on what they need to look for if they decide to go abroad for any type of healthcare. And I focus on Black women. And the reason for that is because Blacks on a whole have the highest rates of chronic illnesses and so many other things. And so I said, let me focus on that niche because I need it. My people that look like me need it. My mother, my sisters, my aunts and cousins. So that's what my channel focuses on.
Yeah, thank you. I know as you were talking about, the representation piece, Dr. Mapp, for you, was there representation? Were there any Black female veterinarians that you recall seeing either when you were younger or even as you progressed in the field?
Definitely not.
Mm-hmm.
When I was younger, definitely males, and predominantly males that didn't look like us. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
for
Mm-hmm.
the longest. But then there were a few, as mentioned before, that I finally got to know, and there weren't many of us. Even the
Mm-hmm.
black male veterinarians, there weren't many of us.
Mm-hmm.
But there were a few in this area. Your father,
Yeah.
and there was Dr. Carl Cousins
Mhm.
and Dr. Dean Hodges.
Mhm.
And I got to meet all these folks and learn a little something from each and every one of them. But
Yeah.
no females, as we said before earlier
Yeah.
on. Um,
You blazed the trail.
yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
thank God, thankfully I have been able to, and because I can say this, that as a young person, I was pretty much turned down because there were no people that looked like me that were
Mm-hmm.
veterinarians, and the others didn't exactly open the door for me. I
Mhm.
can't say that was everyone's experience, but for me,
Mhm.
because I recall going to a certain uh, veterinary office and for summer, and I wanted to just volunteer or do something, and I was just flatly turned away. So I
Mm.
said to myself, when I became a veterinarian, anybody that comes towards me
Yes.
that looks like me, and they don't have to look like me, but that's who's come towards me through the years, and that's fine.
Mhm.
I'm going to help them if they say
Yeah.
they want to come. If they had to be a certain age, um, because I couldn't take care of people under a certain age. Usually my
Yeah.
cutoff was 15. Um,
Mhm.
and anyone that comes to me, I said I'm going to help them, and there've been quite a few over the years,
Yeah.
and a few that are at various stages of development. Like I said, one that just graduated high school and she wants to become a veterinarian. She started undergrad school this fall.
Nice.
Another that starting veterinary school this fall. There's another one that went to Harcum, and she's working. Uh, she's south now, but she's doing work in the field.
Mhm.
And and then I have a couple new ones on the way too. I have brand new couple new people I'm mentoring. As I said, the one young lady mentioned she wanted to become a vet tech, and I told her about the online program she enrolled, and she's on her way.
Love it.
Yeah, and so it's been good.
I
It's been.
love it.
I guess I have a little bit of a legacy somewhere out
You
there.
sure do.
You. Yes.
You planted a lot of seeds, and it sounds like they have taken root and are growing. Brother
Yes.
Moja, some comments before we or any questions before we get ready to close out for the evening.
No, I just want to thank Dr. Mapp for coming on and
Thank
giving
you
us
for
some of her
inviting me.
story. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Wade, for telling us about you.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
thank
I
you,
mean,
Dr. Wade.
yeah, because now as we sit here and we talk, the important thing I think for me that I always remember is someone listening that's going to take what we're saying and embrace it and run with it. We might not know them, we might never meet them, but what we
Mhm.
did, we just gave them some seeds to
Yeah.
plant.
Right.
So I thank you for coming on and putting some seeds into into our global community again. And God bless what you're doing because
Can I
this
say
is
one
very
more
important.
thing?
Yes, ma'am.
Can I say
Mhm.
one more thing before you
Please.
close? And just this is piggybacking off of our current female who's running for president.
Yes.
I'm not gonna get political on here because I don't know how far I can go. But um, she said that her mother told her that do not allow anyone to tell you who you are.
Mhm.
Show them who you are. And I
Mhm.
thought about myself because in high school, the counselor who didn't look like me
Mhm.
told me, "Oh, you can't do this or that,
Mhm.
and you can't go to thus and such, and you can't do." But I never let that get in the way, and I
Mhm.
actually ended up going to one of the Ivy League schools. That she told me, "Oh, you can't go." That's where I got
Mhm.
my veterinary degree from.
Mm.
So when don't let people tell you who you are. Show them who you are.
That's right.
That's so
Follow
sad.
your
That happened
dreams.
to me too. That
That's
happened to me
did
too.
it.
A counselor. It was a white male. It was just, oh, you probably won't go there. You shouldn't do that. You probably
Right.
want to look into something lesser. He told me. I was like, okay,
Exactly.
I'll show you.
Wow.
It
Unfortunately,
happened.
that is such a common story. So school
Yeah,
counselors, please don't do that. Teachers either.
really.
It is such, they told my father he should be a secretary.
See.
Wow.
Yep. And so it is a common story. And even I remember in high school, there were so many girls, and it didn't matter race, nationality, anything. I went to an all girls high school. And so there were so many that said that their interactions with some of the guidance counselors with school would tell them similar things like, oh no, basically you shooting too high and this and that. And they didn't listen, thank goodness, and went on and applied and got in
That's right.
to the different schools. So you do. It is so important that you know who you are and you keep nurturing that and pushing forward. Hold on to your dreams. You can
Yes.
achieve them. I agree.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
agree. I love it. Thank you, Dr. Matt, for bringing
Yes.
that up.
yeah,
Thank
definitely.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's why these what we're doing here is shows are very important because
Mm-hmm.
there have to be a place where we water our children correctly.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
it falls on us elders to make sure that we do for them what was not done for us,
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
because we know the results. We
Yes.
we are the results of standing strong and pushing forward and not giving up.
Mm-hmm.
And our our children need to understand that from us.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It has to come from those who have done it, those who have walked the walk, who have talked the talk, walked it. So now it's up to us to come back and make sure that road is never interrupted again, and it continues to grow and grow. It goes from a 2 lane to a 3 lane to a 4 lane to a 5 lane highway. So
Mm-hmm.
our children know it is possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll say both, right? We want to make sure that we do what wasn't done for us, and we want to make sure that we do the positive things that were done
Yes.
for us,
Yeah.
so that they have both. And when I was thinking about tonight's show, and I was thinking about all of us being on and the mission of Sisters for Harmony. And I'll just read it for those who are unfamiliar. Our nonprofit, our registered 501c3 nonprofit, Sisters for Harmony, the mission is to unite women of all backgrounds and cultures in the local community to guide and support the next generation of young women through mentoring, education, and teaching them to live with a purpose and work towards a common goal by harmonizing their talents, skills, and abilities. We
Mhm.
focus on education, empowerment, networking, mentoring, and uniting. And so that was written by Brother Umoja and Ruby Burke. And it is that whole point. Dr. Wade is putting it up here, right? Representation matters. When
Yeah.
others see that you did it, they believe that they
Mhm.
too can achieve it. Exactly.
Yes.
And so tonight, as I was thinking about the show, I said, wow, how powerful of a career day for people to see a doctor of veterinary medicine, a doctor of nursing, a doctor of clinical psychology. And like you all, I too did not have a mentor at first. Like when I was in sixth grade, when I decided that this is what I wanted to do, I didn't know any women psychologists, and I definitely didn't know any Black women
Mhm.
psychologists. And as I was entering my last semester of my master's program, I went back into that prayer and I said, God, is there a Black woman psychologist? Like, does one exist? Because if one exists, I would love to see them. I said, I don't have to meet them, I just want to see them.
Mhm.
Because if they don't exist, I need to know how much energy I need to exert in this next phase of my journey.
Mhm.
Because if I'm the first one, that's a whole lot of energy that I
Mhm.
have to now
Mhm.
deal with. And in true form, God answered my prayer. And this woman, Dr. Cheryl Rothery, came from Boston, and she came to my college to run the counseling center. And during one of my classes, my professor said, "Oh, we're excited. We have a new colleague joining us. Her name is Dr. Here, I want to meet her." I just knew before I knew anything. I just knew. Here, he was like, "Okay, Kathleen." I said, "No, no, no, no. I need to meet her." And so he was like, because she was a psychologist, and then it turned out she was Black too. Yeah, I go, oh my goodness. I felt like the M&M's commercial. You do exist. Right? So, and she has been in my life since 1998. She is not going
Mhm.
anywhere. But she was that representation that I needed at that time in my life to know what was possible. And really, I mean, just she's been a wonderful mentor and supervisor to me over the last 20 some years. So, all right. So tonight, I just thought I said this will be a great show. So for those who are listening, if you know anyone who is interested in joining any of these fields, here we are as examples that we do exist, that you can do it. We are all approachable and accessible. You can send us messages. You can play the replay back. Dr. Mapp gave the phone number if you need some veterinary services. Dr. Ramontal can be found on YouTube at Medical Tourism. Is it Medical Tourism RN? Is it 812 on YouTube or is it just
Yes.
okay?
Yeah, on every other platform there are no numbers. It's just Medical Tourism RN, but on YouTube it's Medical Tourism RN 812.
Okay, please be sure to check that out. Please be sure to follow us on all of our platforms. And Brother Emoji doesn't have his up, but it is on YouTube. It is UCCN TV. Actually, on all platforms, I believe it's UCCN.
Mm. Yes, it is.
Okay. So, yeah, so be sure to check us out. And as always, follow us here at Ask Dr. Walls 525. We thank you for your time and your attention and your support. We have other things coming up. Brother Moja and I will be back on the third Thursday of this month at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for our Stronger Together episode. I am hoping to have a special guest that night. So, but hold on, we gotta, confirm to make sure the person can join us that night with another profession that many times we don't see a lot of representation. So I'm hoping to make it happen. If not, I'll get them on another time. All right. As always, thank you both again for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. And to our listening audience as well, God bless you. And as always, continue to live your greatest life. See you next time. Take
Thank
care.
Good night.
you.
Good
Bye.
night, everybody.